has worked as a political operative for presidential campaigns in the last 2 election cycles. In the next 5 to 7 minutes, Patrick will share his convictions about the importance of remembering their Judeo-Christian roots and how the United States has differed from other nations in that respect. This speech is titled, Liberty and in God We Trust. Please join me in welcoming Patrick Ketchum.
Thanks. So as I begin, I'd like to make a little gesture to socialism, the redistribution of wealth, even though I am a capitalist and believe in the system we have here in the United States and that it is superior. But I think it's only fair. I've had a really good year, and so I'd like to pass around some coins, and I want you to just take one and then pass the rest on so everyone gets one. I want it to be equal. I want it to be fair. Okay? I was not asked by the Obama administration to do this, although I'm sure he would support this. The United States is very unique. We are the only country in the United States, in the world, that self-identifies as Judeo-Christian. There are lots of countries in the world that identify themselves as Christian. There are even more nowadays that identify as secular. But what our founders were able to do was combine a secular government with a religious society. There are lots of different societies, and they do this in different ways. Muslim societies, Islamic ones, tend to favor theocracies. Eastern societies like Asia, China, we see this in China and Japan, other countries very profoundly in their history, we see a lot of social conformity. But we don't see that so much in the United States because of our Judeo-Christian values. And where's my pointer? Oh. One of the ways we can see this, especially in our country, is on our money. So if you want to take out your coin and read what is on the front of that coin. And on all of our coins, there are 2 words: liberty and in God we trust. Right? So number 1, we don't believe in social conformity, right? The collectivist idea. We believe in individual liberty, which is different from freedom. Liberty is something in a government that we get from God, and the government protects for us. You remember the Declaration of Independence? These truths we hold self-evident: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But this is something that the government protects for us, and that's why we set it up. The other thing is that in God we trust. This isn't something we see on other currency. This is a $5 euro. This is a €5 bill. I served my LDS mission in Spain, and so I used a lot of euros. And so the European Union has about 550 million members in it, and about 27 different countries. The United States, we're about 330 million strong. So this is a lot bigger collection of people than we have. There's no mention of God, lots of numbers. In fact, almost exclusively. This is their coins. In the European Union, they use something similar to us. You know how in our quarters, we have different states, and they have their own little thing in their quarters? They do that in Europe. This is the one for Spain. That is El Rey Juan Carlos of Spain, right there. Or the King John Charles in English. And he's a great guy. He was the successor of Francisco Franco, who was the dictator and sort of the person who started the Civil War back in the 1930s and 40s in Spain. If you know a lot about that, it was an atrocity what happened over there. And so this guy came to power and said, you're free. It's a democracy. He's a great guy. But there's a difference between a society that puts its trust in a man in the United States and the wisdom of our founders who put their trust in God. And like I said at the beginning, it's not just a Christian society that we have, it's a Judeo-Christian society. One of the committees, one of the many committees during and after the Revolutionary War was made up of Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson. Can you imagine a better committee? It's amazing. So they were tasked with making a seal of the United States, and this is one of the ideas that they came up with. They had a few ideas, and this was their favorite one. It didn't end up being selected, but this, does anyone know what that is? The children of Israel. And you can't see it very well, but there is a pillar of fire that's directing them. So they identified a lot with the Jews, actually, our founding fathers. In addition to the fact that a lot of the Morals are the same. The Jews saw themselves as a people separate, who were constantly fleeing Babylon. And that is our history in this country as well. Fleeing oppression and not only physical, economical, but also religious. That's where a lot of our family comes from. And then this chart is the organization of the Hebrew government, which is pretty interesting. I drew that myself. The lines aren't straight, as my wife pointed out. But I couldn't find a better one. So at the top you see Moses. It's working? At the top you see Moses, and it's sort of the equivalent of our president. Under Moses you had Aaron and Joshua, and it's sort of like a vice president or cabinets. Aaron was in charge of the internal affairs of the Hebrew people, and Joshua, of course, was the man of war. And so he was sort of the Secretary of Defense kind of thing. We had a council of 70, which sounds familiar. It was the Senate. The Senate in the United States, now we elect senators in the United States, but before the 20th century, early 20th century, senators in the United States were appointed by state legislatures. These men were appointed. They were wise, older sages in the community. And then they had a body of elected representatives, which is similar to our House of Representatives. You see the similarities? So much of what we see in the United States government comes from the influence of the Israelite nation. This is why even though none of the founders, none of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence identified as Jewish, they were Christian people, they were Protestant people, they were able to combine these two great sources of knowledge, a wealth of morality and virtue, the Old Testament and the New Testament, to form the basis of a society that had to be a moral one. George Washington said, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports." Mr. Toastmaster.